Hello, and welcome to the Iron Spoon Kitchen, where the iron spoon is firmly implanted in a loaf of bread. And you may be wondering, so what is it doing in there? Today, we are going back to 1836 and making a bread pudding recipe. And this is one of the most interesting recipes I've come across because bread pudding has been around for forever, well, as long as they've had bread. And it is a recipe to do something with stale bread. Now, this bread isn't stale, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and cube it and put it in the oven and toast it so that it can get that, not totally toasted, but just a little bit. But this recipe, let me take a look here, is from the Virginia Housewife, and it was published in 1836. And the title of it's bread pudding. And here's the recipe. Grate the crumb of a stale loaf and pour on it a pint of boiling milk. Let it stand an hour. Then beat it to a pulp. Add 6 eggs, well beaten, half a pound of butter, the same of powdered sugar, half a nutmeg, a glass of brandy, and some grated lemon peel. Put a paste in the dish and bake it. Well, once again, with these old recipes, there's a lot left out. And you have to be a really good cook in order to be able to do these things because there's no measurements. And, how much bread? So I did a little research and I came up with this. This is what they sold at my store, and it's 14 ounces. So I'm basing everything on doing something with a 14-ounce loaf of bread. I'm sure you could do a full pound and it wouldn't make a difference. But some of the things that's interesting about this is that it talks about boiling the milk. And you may think that, oh, well, that was to get out the bad bacteria or stuff like that. But no, they didn't really know about, well, they knew about microbes because the microscope was invented in the late 1600s. But the boiling of the milk was not to get rid of bacteria. Now, later on into the 20th century, in late 19th century, that may have been the case. But another reason for boiling milk or scalding it, which is just before boiling, is to enhance the flavors that are going into it. It's as simple as that. So we have 6 eggs because we're making a type of custard. So we have lots of stuff here, powdered sugar, and that you may be wondering, oh, well, that's simple, get powdered sugar. But powdered sugar back in 1836 is not what we have today. That was still, what we have today has cornstarch in it and things like that to keep it separated. Back then, you would take a sugar loaf, hammer out the part that you want, and then you get a mortar and pestle and go through it that way in order to soften it and to make it more powdery. So very difficult to do back then. So we're not going to use powdered sugar. We're just going to use regular sugar today. Let's see. Okay, well, let's get on to this, and I'm going to start cutting up this bread, and we'll be back in just a second. I've had a chance to cut up half of this, and here it is here, and now I'm going to toast that. I left the bread out hoping that it would get stale, but it didn't, even though it's supposedly fresh. So maybe it has a little too many preservatives in it. But I thought I'd show you how I cut this up, is that it's not as easy as you think. And I've never made, in bread pudding, I've never made this before in my life. So this is definitely keeping in stride with the premise of the show. So I've cut that in half, and this is a baguette. Some of the recipes I've read just called for, just white bread. But I wanted to go back and see how much it's changed over the years, over almost 200 years. And for the most part, the ingredients are about the same. You got milk, nutmeg, salt, currants, eggs, butter. Oh, and then this is the flavoring, Applejack. I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So we're going to cut this up into about 3/4 inch cubes. Here we go. So I'm cutting it into, looks like I'm going to cut it into eighths first. Stick with me. This isn't that hard. You can do this. You do want to have a good sharp knife. Okay, we're going to put these together and just cut them up. You know, I'm going to use my sharp knife for this, as opposed to that bread knife is what I was using. This is the first step, and like I said, I'm going to put this in the oven at 325 for about 15 minutes, check on it, and then see what I need to do from there. Okay, that's all you have to do to cut that up. That took, what, maybe a minute or two, something like that. All right, next step is to get this into the oven. I have the, I think I said toasted bits of bread, but we don't want to toast it because that would mean that there would be a bit of a, browning to it. All I want to do is dry it out because remember, this would be stale bread and stale bread would be dry. So at this time, we're going to start mixing all the ingredients together. And this is where I'm going to stay true to the 1836 recipe. Well, with all of it, I am. However, for some things, you just can't, like milk. It's not going to have the same sort of milk as they had back in, you can see, I don't know if you saw that blowing. I actually had the window open in Texas. We had a cool front come through. But we wouldn't have the milk as the same back then because it was raw milk. And so this was a combination of milk and cream, 2.5 cups of each. And we're going to mix all that together. And then for flavoring, I'm going to put in Applejack. And you may be wondering, what in the world is that? Well, it's a type of liquor. And I picked this one. It's called Layered because it's been made since around 1760. And so then this is made from apples, hence the name Applejack, and would have been very available in 1836. This and peach brandy. And I think I said liquor, but it's a brandy. A brandy comes from a fruit. So let's go ahead and get this mixed together. And let's see, why don't you come on over here a little bit closer so you can see me doing this. Hey, here we are. We're going to go ahead and start mixing things together. I'm going to start off with adding the bread, which has been dried out, not toasted. And I'm going to save a little bit out just to put on the top because I've read in another recipe that makes it a little crunchy. So I'm going to save about that much to go on the top. Now we're going to add I have 9 egg yolks. And the reason we have 9 egg yolks as opposed to just the whole egg is that the egg yolk will make it creamier and richer. When you add the whole egg, the white of the egg is the protein, and that will make a recipe firmer. And in this case, could make it a little rubbery. And we don't want that because we're making a custard. So I'm going to add the 9 egg yolks. And that's a lot. That's a lot of eggs. And again, I've got that number based on a couple of other recipes also. Trying to find what would fit for this amount of bread. Now, we're going to go ahead and add the sugar. This is a cup of sugar. Again, I had to adjust things to fit as best I can. I think I'm actually coming up with my own recipe. let's see. We're going to add a little bit of salt, about 3/4 of a teaspoon. And let's go ahead and start mixing this together a bit. Okay, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of cream. I take that back, 2.5 cups of cream and 2.5 cups of milk. Let's get this all mixed together. And this is going to be sitting for a while. We're going to let this sit for about 30 minutes to an hour so things can get absorbed. Now I'm going to put in, it called for some grated lemon rind. Now just put in a teaspoon. That should give it a nice little hint of citrus, but we shouldn't taste a whole lot of it. And instead of vanilla, I'm going to put in, it called for a wine glass of brandy. And so this is a wine glass that my grandmother had, and it's about 2 ounces. So that's what I'm putting in there instead of vanilla. We'll see how that, I have no idea how that's going to come out. And I'm going to make the sauce with that Applejack also. Now I have some currants here, which are they're from the black Corinth grape, which would have been available back then. And I think about raisins and everything like that being available all the time, but it actually wasn't available back then, especially like golden raisins. Well, I take that back. You could get the raisins. However, they were full of seeds. It wasn't until the late 1800s that that process started to change. Now this is supposed to have a little bit of butter in it. Probably should have put that in sooner. So I'm going to continue to mix this up, add the butter, and then when we come back, we'll be putting it into the pan. One more thing I forgot to mention was the nutmeg. Supposed to put half a nutmeg in, and I have never done this before. And I see why you would like to buy it already in a powder form, but it's not too bad. Oh, it smells good. Whenever I hear, cooks talking about using nutmeg, they always say use it fresh, and well, I can tell right now this has a better flavor. It has very strong. And if you watched our first episode about apple pie, you learned that mace is the husk over the nutmeg, and that is used. But the whole fruit, the rest of the fruit for the nutmeg, doesn't taste good at all, and it is just discarded. Maybe they use it somehow, but people don't eat it. Well, gosh, that's probably enough, I would think. So let me give this another little stir a bit. Okay, and I'm going to let this sit for about 30 minutes to an hour. I started to think about this and I thought I probably should put this in the pan to soak up as opposed to just in here. So I'm coming back and making a change. It's been about 30 minutes and I did decide to add those currants to one side of the dish just to see how those would taste, even though the recipe didn't call for it. But in other bread pudding recipes, you do see currants being used, and then also in other puddings, things like that. And this would be called a pudding also, not necessarily what we call a pudding today. But it should be good. I did add another 2 ounces of the Applejack. I tasted it and it felt like it. I didn't taste it at all, so I added that, and we'll see what happens. Okay, into the oven. I have added all the ingredients: sugar, butter, the Applejack, and the 1 egg yolk. And I think this is almost ready. So the next time you see this, I should be pouring it onto the bread pudding. It's done. Let's see. It looks like it toasted up okay. I did put it back in the oven a little bit on the broiler because I thought it was a little pale on the top. And so we'll be tasting it. Here's the sauce right here. But I wanted to go over the recipe one more time, and keep in mind, this is definitely one I have never made. And when we go over the different parts of the recipe, it really doesn't tell you a whole lot. It's kind of like telling you, oh, well, here's everything you need to build a house. Now just go put it together. There's a lot that goes into that, not just the materials. And that's kind of how this is. It's pretty much just the materials. But I did cook this at 325, and it went for right at an hour is what I cooked it. And remember, I used the Applejack as opposed to a bourbon because Applejack or Apple Brandy and Peach Brandy were readily available back in the 1830s and was a favorite. And that is just simply distilled apple cider. So very interesting. So without further ado, let's see if this comes out as a custard. I'm going to start over here. Let's see if it's coming out. It's coming out. Get some of it more of this. Ooh, let's use the iron scoop. Okay. Put some of this good sauce on there. Okay, well, let's give it a try. That is delicious. Of course, that sauce is fabulous. Well, I could eat that whole thing right now. Well, that did turn out well. Ooh, that was delicious. Well, I guess you can't go wrong with bread, sugar, and butter. And that's what we have here. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Iron Spoon Kitchen. And what are you going to do next? Have you thought about pulling out an old cookbook and seeing what was there? I think that you should do that. See what's in your own family history, or give this one a try. And I'll put the recipe at the end of this video so you can look at it. But I'm going to have to write it up and see what all I did because I'm not quite sure. But go out there and see what you can come up with next. Give it a try, or like I said, pull out an old cookbook and just do it. If it doesn't work out okay, it's okay. Just cover it in this sauce. This will be great. Okay, Well, if you do enjoy this video or any of them, please like it and subscribe and share it if you want to. So that concludes this episode of the Iron Spoon Kitchen, and I almost said banana pudding, bread pudding from 1836. Thanks for joining me.